television.
Television, they just kind of. I'm sure he is.
Oh, that's good. I don't know. Here's a little copy.
And we're live.
With you all day.
We're live.
We're live
I
now.
gotta go.
That's pretty funny.
Do you want to talk about this some more?
I'm okay with it.
All right, we'll call the pre-council to order. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is in the back of the chamber. Doug.
Council, thanks very much for an opportunity to go over this ordinance that is being heard today with public testimony at 16-14. What we're looking to do basically is reestablish a pay plan that was in place prior to 2012. It's called M56. And basically that pay plan allows battalion chiefs to be on the same schedule as firefighters. They were on that same work schedule prior to 2012, and then in early 2012, then Chief Huff wanted to reorganize battalion chiefs and put them on a 40-hour work week. Prior to that, they were on a 56-hour work week. So basically what this does is it just reestablishes what we call the M56, allows us to put the pay line back into the LMCEA contract, pay them accordingly on a 56-hour work week, and we have to redo their accruals and such in the computer systems and all. Basically, it does not change their pay one bit. Their pay remains the same. It just means that they'll be on the same rotation as the non-exempt firefighters. These battalion chiefs are exempt, so it does not change anything in terms of their compensation, but they would be on the same work schedule. Chief Linky's here. He could explain that if you need that further information.
I'd love to hear the explanation, because does that mean that you will be actually inside the station or the various stations that you have oversight of more frequently?
Yes, that's actually one of the goals. If it's okay, I'll try to briefly explain, and Doug did a nice job of kind of giving the background. Essentially, prior to 2012, we had 2 battalion chiefs on each shift for a total of 6. And then we also had an assistant chief of operations and assistant chief of administrative services, division chief of training, and then our division chief of logistics, who worked the 40-hour work week. So the 2 chiefs on each shift worked the same shift, A shift, B shift, and C shift. Each was responsible for half the city. Basically, if you split the city down the middle of 33rd Street, one took the east of 33rd and the other took west of 33rd. Then in 2012, then Chief Huff wanted to reorganize and try to get some more administrative tasks and things like that done. So he reorganized based upon a model that he saw in Madison, Wisconsin. And so essentially I was promoted in 2012 to battalion chief. We were all put on a 40-hour work schedule, so each of us were given functional responsibilities. Mine in particular was fire suppression training and research and development and a few other things. And then each of us was also given responsibility for 2 to 3 stations, but we had all 3 shifts. So getting to the stations to address personnel issues or some other training and operational things was sometimes difficult. Then we worked a rotating schedule of 1 24-hour shift every 8 days. So the contact with the operational staff, firefighters, paramedics, and so on and so forth, was somewhat limited to that 1 day a week. Of course, there was a little bit of time during the 8 to 5 time period, but catching up with everybody when they're doing their regular training and responses and things like that is sometimes difficult. So what I am proposing to do is kind of a hybrid of that system, where 3 of our battalion chiefs will retain some functional responsibilities for things like information technology, research and development, some training things, and then 3 of them, the M56 that Doug is talking about, will each be responsible for a shift, A shift, B shift, and C shift. And they'll work the same schedule. They'll be able to essentially have contact with their personnel, address personnel issues as they arise, and hopefully not delay some things, maybe provide some preventative measures in regard to those types of issues, provide some training and consistency as well.
So how does one transition from the three that have the A, B, and C shifts to those three that are just the administrative side of it?
We're already essentially, the three that are going to remain as the administrative side, they're already on that schedule, the 40 to 48 hour work week anyway. So it's actually gonna be a little bit of a change for those that will be going back to the every other day for a couple of weeks, the 56-hour schedule.
So I guess my question was really, how do you transition if you want to go to the administrative side?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Rather than, is there any pay differential there?
No.
No.
No, basically, it's merely scheduling.
So it's relatively easy to transition? in
Yeah,
terms
it's
of
better.
steps, or it's
Yep.
you're all in the same
Yep.
step, and
Correct.
is there fluidity between them? So if you wanted to go from the administration to shift C because of your family schedule, there is that flexibility, or are you pretty much set in shift A or shift B or shift C because of?
I would propose that there would probably be some fluidity, but I'd allow the person that takes the full-time chief position to kind of determine how much fluidity he or she would like. Right now, we just like to transition and move forward with it so that we have that operational consistency.
Other questions? John?
How many battalion chiefs do we have?
We have 6 battalion chiefs, 6 battalion chiefs, and then we have an assistant chief of operations, a division chief of training, division chief of logistics. The division chief of logistics doesn't have any operational responsibilities, so he doesn't have a fire service background. Otherwise, the assistant chief of operations and the division chief of EMS do have some operational background as well.
I've got to ask my age-old question, does this help us facilitate into ERVs, emergency research, or rescue vehicles?
This really doesn't have anything to do with that.
Shut up.
It does help with communication, with our firefighting force and such, and getting their management directly into the station house and a little bit more operational efficiency, so.
Okay.
How would you say this restructuring will enhance public safety?
I'd say that it enhances public safety just primarily from a consistency standpoint. Right now, with a different chief on shift every 8 days, there's a lot of disconnect in communication between the personnel that are actually out performing the work and the command staff that is trying to manage the department. So I think that enhances public safety in that we have 3 people that will be more collaborative and focusing just on the operational items that need to be addressed, the EMS response, the staffing of our apparatus, and the optimum staffing of our apparatus, and those types of things.
Thank you.
Carl?
So the battalion chief will be working specifically with that group of people, and I would think, maybe it depends on the chief, that,
Sure.
that would be helpful for morale and making staff feel like that they're engaged and.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's an excellent point, and that's been something that we have had some issues with over the past couple of years, is some morale, because some personnel have communicated to me that they don't feel as valued with what they're doing, because there's just not a lot of there's not as much communication as there could be from the leadership with the fire department. And so I'm trying to change that a little bit by having someone that they can actually run as a focal point and can provide them with that type of feedback.
John?
Yeah, with the 4 new fire stations, or the relocations, and the 2 new ones coming on, does this transition to that as easily, or any challenges there down the road?
As far as land area covered, maybe just a little bit, but and certainly one chief for essentially 18 companies is a little bit of a span of control issue, but it's at least something. It's like I've said a couple times already, there's at least one person that can serve as a focal point as opposed to anywhere between 2 and 4 depending on what the situation is.
So can you talk about what's happening right now? So do you have all 6 battalion chiefs on 40-hour work weeks? So they're 8 to 5. Are they not staying the extra hours when?
I'll try to, that's another good question, and I have it spelled out if you'd like it in print as well, but I will explain it to you, and you'll hand those out, perfect, thank you. I'll explain it to you as well as I can, and I'll try not to confuse you. So how we do it right now, let's say, of course, I'm operating as the interim chief, but let's say that I'm not, that I'm a battalion chief. So if my OIC day, my officer in charge day, is today, I work a 24-hour shift. So I'd be working 0700 today until 0700 tomorrow. During that time, I'm responding to any major incident that occurs in the city, whether it's a working fire, a major car accident, or something like that. Also, during that time, you're attempting to address personnel scenarios, work on your other administrative items that you have to work on. Then tomorrow, after my 24-hour shift is done, I stay in and work 8 to 5. So essentially, it's more of a 32-hour shift as opposed to a 24 if you work a weekday. And then go home at 5, work Wednesday, Thursday, take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. That's your weekend.
Okay.
But then the following week, I'd work a 24-hour shift. My 24-hour shift would fall on Tuesday, and the same thing happens. If you work, if our battalion chiefs work their OIC shift on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, they typically take the Monday off. So that's how it works into an average of about a 48-hour week.
Okay, so you'll have one person on A, B, and C, and that person will be officer in charge for those days.
Yes.
And then when they take vacation,
That's another good question. When they take vacation, we will either backfill with the administrative battalion chiefs that aren't
Okay.
working the 56-hour week, or we also have people on promotional lists that can act as battalion chiefs as well that we'll utilize sometimes.
okay. And so then it seems like more of a militaristic type structure where you basically have a battalion chief that's almost acting like a company officer, and that's their guys. I mean,
Correct.
in different.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah, every engine company has a captain, and we function under a span of control, and then the battalion chiefs essentially are responsible for those
Yeah.
captains.
Seems like your line of communication from the bottom to the top would be more streamlined. That way they're not
Mhm.
going through 4 or 5 different people depending on
Exactly.
who's the officer in charge that day.
A little more continuity.
Yep.
Exactly.
How does that affect, is there any effect to those 3 battalion chiefs that are on, like a full-time 40-hour week status?
No.
Other than they may have to work a 24-hour
Yeah,
shift?
and that will hopefully, our plan is to have if one of the shift battalion chiefs decides he wants to take vacation or has a sick day or something like that. The sick days we really can't control, but a vacation day will hopefully be known, well in advance so that we can fill that position.
What's a day like for a battalion chief?
It's busy. It's pretty nonstop. Most of the time they come in at about 5:30 in the morning, just in case there are any staffing issues. We look at the staffing to make sure a minimum number of personnel on each shift. Sometimes you have to move people around depending on if they're apparatus that would go out of service otherwise, and then conduct the morning meeting and conduct and attend training. Any administrative items that they might have, they attend to, and then respond to any one of the, I would say probably on average 2 to 4 incidents per day as well.
Wow, okay.
And then do all the reports, and that's your day. It typically takes the whole shift.
So who would be taking those A, B, and C shifts?
As far as who the
Battalion
personnel would
chiefs,
be.
yeah. Do you know?
Battalion Chief Jeremy Gagg would be A shift, Battalion Chief Jim Bopp would be B shift, and Battalion Chief Leo Benish would be C shift. That's who I've planned as taking those positions right now.
Okay.
And with approval for this, how soon would this go into effect?
Well, if you approve it as soon as next week, hopefully.
We'll have to wait the requisite period after third reading and such, but I think, Chief Linke has wanted to put this in place probably in mid-January.
So this is your is this something that you heard from firefighters that they were looking for?
I've been hearing this for 4 years.
Yeah. This was also something that was identified when Mr. Prothman was in, our search consultant for the fire chief, and he recognized that this was a disconnect and brought this forward as well. So we think it's the right thing to do as well.
Are we gonna see some more changes like this?
I don't anticipate any at this
Okay.
point. I can't speculate with, any new fire chief, Trent.
Sure.
But we're not gonna see any changes from my standpoint.
Okay.
So.
Other questions?
Thank you.
At this point, do you feel like you have enough information? Chief Linky wasn't planning on staying for a public hearing, but I'll certainly coax him to if you
I'd
think
be
you want
happy
him
to
there
if
for
you need me
those,
to.
for those questions from the dais.
I think this is pretty helpful. I don't know if you would wanna recap it during the public hearing, just so we have.
I'll do my best. I just don't have the operational insight that Tim has, but just want to get a read from you so that if you feel you're comfortable enough, I'll handle it and let him go home to his family. If not, I'll coax him to stay for a while longer.
I'm okay.
We're not thinking.
I'm sorry. Well, extended family,
Extended, yeah.
step-in-law, I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll adjourn and
Okay.
move forward.
All right,
Very
thank
good.
you very much,
Thanks very
appreciate
much.
it.
Appreciate it.